Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, the podcast for all things neurodivergence. I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist and professional speaker, and I'm happy to be your host through the wild trails of the neurodivergent world.
And I'm Jake Noonan, educational coach and humanities teacher, your co-host and producer, and I'm thrilled to help share the stories and the experiences of wonderful people in the world of neurodiversity.
We're really excited for today's guest, which we are going to say a lot because we're always really excited about every guest we get. So let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Nerding Out on Neurodiversity. I am your host, Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist, professional speaker, author, and proud co-host of this podcast. I'm here, as always, with my friend, colleague, co-host, Mr. Jake Noonan. Say hi, Jake.
Everybody, so excited as always, but even more excited this time because we have one of my oldest friends being interviewed today. And I'll give you a brief summary, but we actually played in a band together. I'm best friends with her husband, lived with them for a year. This is a deep one for me, but I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Alison Cloud. I go by she, her. I am a dental assistant. That is my job. I put my hands in mouths all day, which is great. And yeah, I've known Jake for a very, very long time. Very good friend of ours.
So you put hands in mouths all day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole thing. That's a whole thing.
That's my favorite way to explain my job because it throws everyone off guard.
I am thrown. Consider me thrown.
Yeah. I am the one that hands the dentist all the tools. I put the straws in the mouths, and it's a whole thing. It's chaotic.
Chaotic is a good word for it. I have far too much experience with dental people. I've had a lot of work done on my teeth. So assistant, not hygienist, right? Are they different terms?
Very different. The hygienist, you have to go to school for that, and they're the ones that actually clean your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not do that.
So you stick the hands in the mouth, not for any reason, just to stick hands in the mouth.
Yeah, it's because that's what I want to do. The doctors they question it every time, but I just go for it.
This doesn't feel medically necessary, but doesn't it though? All right. I mean, it's one of those things. When I go to the dentist, I'm always I feel like for as many overlaps there are with psychology and other fields, like education, what Jake does, medical health, sure, sports, business, sure. But I don't feel like mental health and dentistry talk. And if there's if there's a medical procedure that seems to cause the most anxiety in people, I think dentists would be at least the top three.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys manage the, broadly speaking, behavioral aspects of that?
You mean with the patients and how we deal with their anxieties and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have severe anxiety all the time. So when we have a patient that come in, they usually warn us that they'll either have a phobia of the dentist or they have trauma over the dentist, or they're just generally anxious about the whole procedure. And I tend to connect with them very well because I usually am like, well, we're going to take great care of you. I totally understand. If you ever need anything, just raise your left hand. I got you. And I try to calm them down as much as I can throughout the whole process. And sometimes I'll mention I have the same exact way, even though I work for a dentist. I don't like going to the dentist and get my mouth worked on either. I'll try to give them tips and just try to tell them to take deep breaths. So there is a lot of personal interlacing with talking about our own anxieties and helping with the patients. And a lot of times they actually will just give me their story as well. And it's kind of interesting. It's like the customer service aspect of the medical field. And it makes a lot of connections, especially with patients that come in often, because we'll remember each other. And then I'll ask them for updates and they'll let me know. And it definitely helps ease their anxiety.
Oh, that's pretty great. Right on. So you mentioned that you have significant anxiety. Do you mind sharing us with like what's the story there? What's the what's the origin story?
Yeah, so I've had pretty bad anxiety ever since I was a child. Used to like to come to my mom and be like, I feel like I'm gonna wake up and be the only person on the earth. And
Oh.
I know exactly where that came from. And it was from a very specific cartoon episode from Billy and Mandy,
Oh my God.
where Mandy wakes up and there's no one there.
We have never referenced Billy and Mandy on this show yet. And yet it's like, God, I mean, it's very on brand.
Right?
Love that show so much.
So neurodivergent. Like Billy is like the most neurodivergent person, right? Oh, damn. Okay. So you wake up, your last person on earth, and thus the anxiety begins.
Yep. I think that's where when I was kind of introduced to a lot of anxiety-inducing things when I was younger, whether it be just like family stuff or living situations. My dad letting me watch horror movies probably way too young when I shouldn't have. I think it all started when I was very young and it just escalated more and more. And it took me up until I think I was 17 for me to actually start going to therapy for it. And that's when I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And then a couple years after that, I was diagnosed with depression. And then I've just been kind of in and out of therapy for the last 10 years, probably, just kind of like working on that and trying to like build up on that. But it's definitely something I deal with every single day.
And does that factor into your neurodivergence?
I think so, for sure. I'm actively trying to get tested for ADHD, just to kind of figure out if that's like actually what's going on. I'm 99% sure that that's happening because everything lines up. But I think that kind of goes in with it like interacts with my anxiety and they kind of go hand in hand with everything. But I think all the trifecta definitely goes in with my neurodivergency.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I obviously have a very specific perspective on what it's like to get diagnosed because I'm the one who does the diagnosing. Right? People come to me and it's like, well, yeah, it's good you're here. Let's do our tests and let's find out. But what's it like finding that diagnostic process as an adult? Because we know it can be really rough out there.
For me, I'm very much like a person that's like, I want to know why something's happening, especially when it's personal. Like, why do I feel this way? What's causing this? Like, how can I ease this feeling that I have? So when it comes to me getting a diagnosis for ADHD, I think it's more for a greater understanding of being like, oh, that makes sense. That's why I'm doing this. But when it comes to being an adult, I think a lot of people kind of look at it like, wow, you're doing this so late. Like, what is the point of going and doing this now when like you're out of school? Now you're just in a job and you're just being an adult. And I think it just comes down to that greater understanding that you have more of a privilege and freedom to do when you are. Like for me, I'm 31 and I at that point where I can take charge and figure these things out for myself. So I think the challenge is like people being like, well, why now? And I'm just like, well, it's time. It's better late than never. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask off of that. Like, I know we've talked about it pretty in depth at this point, but I know Dr. Matt has not heard, obviously, and our listeners haven't heard. But where did that decision to like start diving into being tested for ADHD or the considerations start? And then like, how did that start developing more for you as like, this is a thing I actually want to do and I want to dive into and I'm actually curious about, and this could change a lot of things for me. Like, where did that all start for you?
Definitely a couple of years ago, I was getting to a point where I kind of woke up and I was like, I really want to figure myself out because there was years where I wasn't myself and I let certain outside factors kind of take that. And I got to a point where I was like, who is Alison? Why are we the way we are?
Yeah.
So I was kind of looking into it, and I went into just like forums and, TikTok people kind of going in, and I started relating more to a lot of things that I was reading. And I was like, this seems like a path I can go down. Maybe this is where I can kind of do that. And I was finally in an environment where I felt comfortable to do that and had a support system that would make me feel like, okay, so like I feel comfortable enough to dive into this realm. And that would probably be like 5-6 years ago I started all of that.
When you mention support systems, what does that look like for you? And like, what's been some of the most successful supports in place for you?
Well, definitely my husband. So Tim, when we met, he was so open to me as a person. And I had never had that in a relationship where they were very much like, oh, this is what you like. That's awesome. Keep doing that. So to have someone who I can go to literally for anything with no judgment, that was the biggest support. And of course you, Jake, because we relate on a lot of things, and I never felt like I couldn't come to you about certain feelings or like things I felt like going on in my brain.
The feeling's mutual also, just so you know.
Well, I'm glad. So having like friends that understand and I felt comfortable with, I have like a few core people that are like that for me. And that was the support I needed. Don't need like a huge circle, don't need a huge crowd. Just, those few people be my pillars.
When it's somebody like Tim, I mean, I personally love Tim, so.
He's lovable.
Well, we have Tim right here. No.
He's currently delivering the mail. I just dropped him off some coffee, so that would be pretty great.
No, we're not that good yet. Yeah, someday we're going to be like special guests and sound effects and maybe some pyrotechnics.
Ooh.
For an audio podcast, it's not necessary, but we'll have the budget.
We'll just tell people that it's going on, and they'll be like, I'm imagining it the whole time.
You guys would not believe the dragons we have, guys. It's like season 3 of Game of Thrones before it got bad. It's very impressive.
They're large. I see it right now. It's right there.
Yeah, are the dragons here with us right now, Alison?
I feel it. They are.
One of the things we talk about a lot is that 1 out of 5 people are neurodivergent, right? So think of your 4 best friends. If none of them are quirky and offbeat, well, surprise, it's probably you. But then you think about how neurodivergent people tend to flock together. Do you know what the word is for a group of flamingos?
No.
Flamboyance.
Oh, all right. I'm here for it.
Right? And I think it's like, yeah, we are a flamboyance of ADHDers, right? We attract each other. Like, I met Jake for like 30 seconds. I was like, oh, you and I have similar brains. Except you are fast, can jump high and play instruments. But other than that, we will be good friends.
And still are.
Yeah. So like, it's not official diagnosis that it's like, well, I'm friends with ADHD people, so therefore I have ADHD. However, if y'all vibe with us, then it's like, that's pretty demonstrative, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why, you mentioned like the TikTok world, right? Like the videos, the social media. And people ask me about this all the time. They're like, Dr. Matt, isn't it bad? I'm like, I don't think it's bad. Once again, I wouldn't show a TikTok video to my doctor and say, look, I need these things.
Yeah.
But anytime you can take the conversation about something potentially stigmatizing out of the darkness into the mainstream, more people like you can see that and go, maybe that's me. You lead with your conversation about anxiety and how anxiety can turn into depression, but also how people who are neurodivergent are far more likely to be anxious and depressed. So it may have been the missing piece of that diagnostic puzzle the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, what do you remember the content that pointed you in this direction?
There was a good amount of time where, your For You page is always changing for how long you watch a video, what videos you look for. There was a good string of time where a lot of people that were showing up on my feed were neurodivergent, or they had health conditions that were showing up that I also related to. I remember watching they were like a day in the life of someone who is chronically ill and has ADHD, which I'm just like, oh, that sounds just like me. I'm like expecting me to be in the video. But I would watch it and I was just like, wow, like this resonates with me. And I'm not used to seeing other people verbalize these same issues that I'm trying to put a name to or try to figure out from going to doctors or anything. So a lot of people just telling their stories or just explaining in very good ways of what they're dealing with, like in their brain. And it's harder to show what they're feeling. So to be able to hear it and see what they're doing to help with it, that was what I was seeing.
And you mentioned chronic illness. Is that a thing you're comfortable sharing with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I call myself a mystery diagnosis.
Ooh.
I don't know what's going on, but we're figuring it out. I've had chronic pain since I was in high school, did physical therapy, still go in and out of physical therapy. I get sick a lot, so I always thought it might be like an autoimmune disease. My sister has Sjogren's and lupus, so I was always like, well, I have it in my family, like there's definitely a possibility. But so I started going to more doctors over the last couple of years once I got really good health insurance. So rheumatologists, going to other specialists. I just saw a hematologist. Like we're trying to knock everything out of the park to find out what's going on. Still don't know, but we're making progress. We're rolling things out, and I think that's what matters. But by seeing people online dealing with certain pains that I feel or certain symptoms, it's leading me down the path of maybe I should look into this. This tracks, maybe I should talk to my doctor about getting this very specific test or going to this very specific specialist. So with the health journey, it's very much just knocking down the pins and rolling things out of the table. So we're slowly getting out to find out what that mystery is.
Better late than never, right?
Absolutely.
You know, this will be our second pop culture reference of the episode.
Third.
Actually, I guess third. I did say Game. Do you remember House?
Yes.
Hugh Laurie
Mhm.
and just all his beautifulness. Every episode of House, they were like, it's not lupus. Does someone actually have lupus? So, I mean, the relationship between autoimmune diseases and chronic illness and neurodivergence is very well documented, but very poorly understood. It seems to be a super sensitivity thing. That's what like our main thing is, and that's not a super helpful term to put on it because we don't really understand super sensitivities either.
Mhm.
Right? We know they exist and we know the part of the brain they come from, but how that connects to something else. Like, do you know that neurodivergent people are significantly more likely to have seasonal allergies?
Interesting.
Like 71%, I believe is the number. Jake, we can fact check that later, right?
Explains a lot, though, too.
I mean, when we worked at Grayson and like the hay fees, it was just like, just everyone have a box of tissues. All of you, here's Claritin like Tic Tacs.
Nonstop.
Nonstop. And I mean, I have bad seasonal allergies, so I'm like, check. And also much more likely to have GI issues. When it's one of those things, once again, it's not diagnostic. Not all things are correlational or causational. But then when you start unpacking the other pieces of the mosaic, you're like, there's a lot more boxes here than I can't pay attention sometimes. Damn.
Mhm.
I'm absolutely rabbit holing on this apparently. So have they checked you for EDS?
That is my next step.
Yeah.
I've been interested in looking into POTS as well. I've had like a full blood panel recently because we were trying to rule out things like lupus.
It's not lupus.
It's not apparently. Apparently it's not for me. Which I'm glad that it's not. Which kind of is like it's a double-edged sword because when they tell me it's not this, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm really glad I don't have this, but also like, what is it then if it's not this? But yeah, I've been looking into that. That's actually my next step is I believe it's an endocrinologist that I would see for that. So now that I have the hematologist out of the way, that's going to be the next step.
I mean, I've had to back channel myself into learning a lot about EDS and POTS because it really does become one of those things where it's like, wow, a lot of the people I see have these conditions. I would be a less good therapist if I wasn't as fluent as possible in these terms, right? And and then POTS and then PANDAS. Our good friend and future podcast guest, Austina Devante, she's sort of the PANDAS expert. I always call her when I have questions on that. So it's great that we're talking about this because the experience of one's neurodivergence is not just mental, it's not just psychological, it's not just academic. It is really like it's as global a thing, right? And you're being really vulnerable and sharing that with us. And I know that's going to help a lot of people who are listening to this who are thinking, wait, like you're going to be the TikTok for the person who needs to hear that information, right? You're that person. And I applaud your bravery for being willing to not only undergo that journey yourself, which is hard and expensive, but also being vulnerable enough to share that with our audience. So thank you.
Thank you for giving me the platform to do it. I've always been very open with my mental illness, with my pains, with everything, because I do think that it's good to talk about it. I think that's what more communities should do to understand neurodivergency, is to be able to just be comfortable enough to talk about it, because you never know who would be listening, who can connect to it. And I know for me, it's always nice to find people to connect with that are also dealing with it, because then I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one. Like, I'm not a hypochondriac. I'm not, just making this up. This is a real, tangible thing that's happening.
Oh, the hypochondriac label.
It drives me bonkers.
It's right up there for me with the idea of like you're overreacting because it implies there's a right level of reacting.
Hmm.
And it's like, hey, here, crazy thought. Maybe my feelings and reactions to things are my feelings and reactions to things and are not right or wrong because there's no external standard to hold me to.
Hmm.
And take that, society.
Yeah.
Best platform ever. We're taking down society. Next season. This season we're establishing. Uh, so how does one go from I'm an anxious high school kid to professionally sticking your hands in people's mouths?
Networking, just luck. I think I manifested this in a weird way. I am very into oddities. I like collecting things. I have a huge hyper fixation on medical history, and teeth fall into that. I have a collection of teeth, and I got teeth tattooed on me before even getting this job. But I actually come from retail. I come from corporate retail, and I was laid off from that job last April, I would say. They were downsizing. I didn't make it. Totally fine. But my husband's brother-in-law, so I guess my brother-in-law now, he's a dentist. He's a part owner in the practice, and he knew I needed a job, and I love teeth. So he messaged me. He was like, hey, would you be interested in shadowing a couple of days, see if you like it? And, if you like it, we'd like to hire you or short staff. And I was like, of course I'll try this. This is crazy and weird and makes me feel like the Barbie of whatever, because it's like I'm going from Corporate-Barbie to Dental-Barbie. So there was no real way that it happened. I just kind of fell into it.
Love it. And do you think that embracing that kind of wild, shifting journey, do you think that's part of the experience of your neurodivergence?
I think so, because I think if I wasn't already all over the place for the most part, like I think I would have stopped and thought about it. But this time I was just like, no, we're just gonna do it. We're just gonna see what happens.
We're in for it. Yeah.
And it was terrifying. I've been there for about 4 months now, and I'm still very, very anxious about it. I can do a mean filling. I'm so good at fillings. I can help at doing every step for that. But I still go into it being like, oh no, like what happens today? What am I gonna do? But then I just keep pushing myself to be like, you got this, you like teeth, you like this, you're comfortable here. But it definitely was a huge jump. That's for sure.
It feels like a big jump. I mean, absolutely. And for an anxious person, like, how did you marshal that? Like, how do you, like, I won't even use the past tense. How are you marshaling that? Because it sounds like it's a day-to-day challenge.
Yeah, I get the Sunday scaries on Friday sometimes because of
Oh
it.
no.
So I have to try very hard to not think about it. So I distract myself. I go to therapy as well. So I talk to my therapist a lot about it. We try to find ways to, kind of like help myself think of the better aspects of this, and like figure out, why are you anxious about this? Did you actually mess something up? Did you drown someone because you didn't suction their spit up quick enough? And I'm like, no. And she's like, okay, well then let's try to find a way to look at this as of like, you're doing a good job. Don't set yourself up to like fail before you've even done it. Cause that's what I do. I'm like, I'm gonna mess this up today. I already know it. And then I don't. And then it's just a cycle. It's improving. That's for sure.
I mean, we know how powerful our brains are, right? And the difference between I'm going to screw this up and I might screw this up is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you push back on that part of your brain that's like, you're going to screw this up? Oh, you think you're good at fillings? You've done 1,006 fillings in a row. Well, so statistically, you're likely to screw this next one up. Like, how do you push back against that anxious brain?
I let it kind of be that little voice in my head until I can tune it out. And I kind of just barge through it. And I just try to keep telling myself, like, you got this. A lot of times I'll clock in, I'll put my scrub jacket on, and I look in the mirror and I'm like, you got this. You've been doing it for 4 months and they haven't fired you. You're going to do great. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, you're going to drop the suction. You're going to give them the wrong instrument. And I do. I've dropped the suction so many times and I have to sanitize it in the middle of a procedure, or I give them the Explorer instead of the Hollenbeck, which is all terms I had to learn, whole new language. And it's fine. They say, hey, that's cool. You gave me the right tool next. Like, you didn't waste a lot of time. The patient's alive. They're happy. Like, you got through this procedure.
It almost sounds like there's that dichotomy of your internal talking to yourself of like, I can do the thing. Yeah. And also having that external validation of like, I'm looking in the mirror. I look like a dental hygienist. I know what I'm doing. But then also like understanding and kind of rationalizing and wrestling with the other internal of like, you can't do the thing. You're going to mess it all up. What's the difference that you've noticed between like your corporate retail job and this job regarding your neurodivergence and like how that's been handled?
So I thought about this in the sense of when I was working retail, corporate retail, I was working from home. I was very closed off. Any meeting I had was like this, always over the computer. I worked with one of my best friends, so we would get on call all the time, but it was a very isolating job and it was very mind numbing. I didn't have to do anything. So it definitely made me kind of not pay attention. I could easily sit here, do my job, and watch a Korean drama or watch people play Dungeons and Dragons. And I just would be all over the place and have my phone up, have that up, have my work. But now I have to be with people. I have to be on, I guess. I have to be on, I have to be focused. So it's a huge difference with that. And I actually am really glad for that. Even my husband was like, I think you need to get a job that's not from home because you are just doing the same thing by yourself every day. It was a huge, drastic jump, but it's a lot of learning to how I can kind of focus and figure it out. So it's still a process.
Wow. All right. Now, Jake, we can probably go back and edit this part in because you asked such a good question, but you stepped on the question I had to ask. All right. So going back to the medical, the dental tools, you said one of them was a Hollenbeck?
Yes.
Does anybody ever do the I ain't no Hollenbeck girl? Because I feel like that joke is right there.
No, but Monday morning when I go in, I absolutely will. I'm just going to start singing it to the patient.
That shit is bananas. Bananas.
That's the only way I remember how to spell bananas is I have to sing that song.
This shit is Hollenbeck and try to spell it the whole time.
And I'll still spell it wrong. You know me, Jake. I can't spell anything ever.
What? They'll ask for the spacer and your brain will reach for the Hollenbeck. You're like, it ain't no Hollenbeck, girl. And then it's like, the spacer. Like, how do you do this so well? You're like, you don't actually want to know.
No, not at all.
It's dangerous up here. There be dragons. It felt like low hanging fruit. I felt like we had to ask that question.
But I love it. I love that.
It's an important question.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love all the stuff that you're saying about managing your anxiety. And Jake, that was an awesome question. Let me ask you this. A lot of anxious people feel a lot of anxiety socializing. It's like, wow, this is really hard. And neurodivergent people, just because there aren't a lot of us, often feel strange socializing. And yet, here you are in a healthy married relationship. You have at least one friend who happens to be here on the podcast with us. So, what's been your social journey? Because you mentioned like the challenges of working from home versus working around other people. So, like, what is socializing like for you?
I'm like in the middle between being extrovert and introvert. So I find myself able to socialize. I can do small talk so easily for me, and I don't have a filter a lot of the time. So that's kind of how my socializing goes, is I will just do whatever. When I was younger, it was very much like adapting to each kind of personality type or friend group. In high school, I was friends with everybody. Like I could sit with the kids on the football team, but then I can go sit with the girls that always would ask you to meet them at the Burger King to fight after school. And then I could also hang out with the band kids. So I always found a way to try and connect with those people, but I definitely would still feel like I was on the outskirts of all of those friend groups. So not necessarily like acquaintance or superficial friendships, but definitely like I'm in this friend group, but I'm looking at it from back here a lot of the times. Getting older, socializing has been weirder for me. I have like a good core friend group, but for example, tomorrow I'm going to my sister's party for my brother-in-law. It's a birthday party, so I will be interacting with all of her friends. She's 9 years older than me. They're all way older than me. I know a couple of her friends, but other than that, everyone's going to be a stranger. So I usually have a buffer, and that's how I'm comfortable in any situation. But my buffer will be delivering the mail until 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So I will have to sit there and just be like, all right, what are they talking about? I don't want to just sit here on my phone, not interacting. So how can I, someone who's almost a decade younger, try and connect into like whatever they're talking about, whether it's pop culture or their children that I do not have. So it's interesting as an older adult.
Yeah, and there's some really great humility there, like understanding like the rules of engagement, as it were. Like they're different, right? And you don't have your buffer. And what you're modeling, I think, really well for a lot of our listeners is the idea of the only place you can start is where you are, right? Like, boy, it would be great if you were Susie High School and like could just like go and just hang out and feel comfortable, but you're aware of the things and strategies that you have used to be successful and comfortable in the past. And if you do a accounting of what those things are, it really level sets like, oh, I don't have some of these things, but you can't not go. So how do you lean into that? How do you embrace that? And I think, it's really cool to hear your thought process in action.
Mm-hmm. Internally, the whole time I will be like freaking out a little bit, but externally, I'll be having a really good time. One thing I can add though about the socializing, being in the band helped so much.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah, can you actually go a little bit into detail of like why and like what your experience was for that? Because like as the drummer, I was sitting in the back. I didn't know much of what was happening. I'm not the front facing person. So like I could just go up and play and then be like, okay, I'm in the background. Bye guys. And just like hang out. Whereas like you're the face of it.
Yeah, that was an interesting time of my life to be just on stage and like I wasn't allowed to have a mic stand for some reason because I couldn't just stand there. So I had to be all over the place, interacting with the crowd, trying to remember the words and stay on time. And we both know I'm really bad at tempo, so I don't know how that worked out.
Never given you a tambourine.
Nope.
Ever.
Nope, not at all. I can't even clap on stage with everyone without getting it off beat. But I think it helped because I was the center of it, I was able to then have that be the conversation, not even just about myself, but the music. So if people came up to me, I'm like, okay, you're here at the show. That is our main, we're both here for it. We're connecting through the music. So then I have a base to jump off of. And when it came to networking with other bands, socializing, we talked about the music. So I didn't have to think like, oh, what do you want to grow up to be? Like, what's your major in college? I had to be like, all right, you like this music. Let's talk more about bands. Like, what other bands do you like? What is your next album going to sound like? So that helped build up the aspect of like conversing with strangers is like we have that common ground and then we just jump off of there.
Well, there's a great piece of small talk and socializing that I talk a lot about therapeutically, and I devoted a whole section to this in my book because it's like small talk is a means to an end. And neurodivergent people tend to hate small talk because it feels artificial. But what I tell people is it's the 3S rule: small shared similarities. So if I'm at a concert and you're at a concert, that is a small shared similarity, right? We are both here listening to the music. The sound is here. And that creates that platform, even if it's an inch above nothing, it's something to talk about. And then as you engage, you might find more things to talk about, right? Like you ask so many great organic follow-up questions. And I think that really facilitates the creation and maintenance of relationships, right? And that's really cool. So it's like if you can find something you have in common with somebody else, you may not become best friends, but it is that platform to at least start a conversation.
Mm-hmm. I'm also not a fan of silence when I'm talking to someone. I get very awkward. I'm a very awkward person for how outgoing I'm told that I am. I also have a tendency of just saying very awkward things without thinking about it. And then I have to like rebound to make it not awkward anymore. So I like small talk because of that, because I don't like the silence. Because you can read it. I can't hide it when I am awkward and uncomfortable and like not knowing what to do. So I think that's why I am good at small talk, because I just always am like, well, I have to do something. I can't just sit here with you in silence and looking at each other.
Well, then we'll just keep having you back on the podcast as a guest because then we'll just fill all those silences forever.
Awesome. Happy to do it.
You talking about like high school you and having the music experience where it's like, there's a thing that we're connected to. There's this similarity. There's this communication that we're going to have because I know you like the music. I know that you like some kind of music. You might be a singer in a different band, what have you. But how do you then prepare yourself for like what you're going to with your sister, where it's, you don't know what the topics might be. You don't know, like you might not know everybody there ahead of time. The only really like commonality is your sister and the relationship to her. But like that would feel kind of weird going to a birthday party for your sister and being like, hey, let's sit here and talk about my sister for the whole time because that's the commonality we have. Like how do you go about, or how will you go about like understanding and processing that?
Well, I know my sister and I know my brother-in-law and I know their personalities. And I know that my sister, she kind of finds people that are also similar to her. So I'm kind of going into, I'm like, okay, so if they're friends with my sister, me and my sister get along very, very well. So hopefully, if that's the case, then maybe me and her friends will get along, because then I can be like, okay, I know my sister loves Saves the Day. I know her friend Amber loves Saves the Day. And Amber, I've known her my whole life. It's always been like, oh yeah, you're my sister's friend. I see you post on Facebook. Not a lot there, but I know that if she's friends with my sister, then there's at least a couple array of topics like Save the Day or art or fashion that I can probably go into. But with all the people that I don't know, it's kind of just going to be me going into it and just feeling out the room. Because this happened for her birthday in February. I went out to dinner with all of her friends. And sometimes they had to come to me to ask me questions or see what was going on. Other times it was me just kind of listening to their conversations and like politely getting in there with the conversations. So I have a feeling that's kind of what it's going to be like, is just me kind of feeling it out, seeing what happens, and just knowing like they're my sister's friends, probably similar personality types.
Right. Not going around to every single person like, here's this picture of me and Chris Conley.
Yeah. Which I've done actually quite recently. I was talking about Matthew Lillard because we were talking about horror movies and Scream, and I was like, here's a photo of me and him that I met him a couple years ago.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
An iconic performance in Scream.
Oh, so good.
And I would argue probably the greatest casting job of all time, Casting him in Scooby-Doo as Shaggy. I mean, the physicality, the accent, the facial hair. I mean, it's iconic. I mean, that's Pantheon level, right?
Oh yeah.
And I also have just a mad needle drop of Saves the Day in my head right now. But you guys are the band people. I'll let you sing it. Not you. That's not my skill set.
We did cover at your funeral
Mhm.
multiple times.
Such a good song.
That was like our song to cover every show. People loved it. So we're like, we're just gonna keep doing it.
Oh man, and the harmonies there. I mean, on the bridge, it's like, let's go. Like I got a long drive coming up. I think I'll be playing some Saves the Day. And then we can send this podcast to them. Like, hey guys.
Yeah. Hey, you want to come on? You want to do a theme song for us real quick?
Gosh, I wonder if Saves the are neurodivergent. Let's think about that lyrics. Yeah. Alrighty. So we are coming towards the end of our recording time. So Alison, we are going to ask you our two final questions. And then if there's anything you want to leave our audience with, you can. So Jake, I'll go first this time because I know that you love your question. So Alison, if you could have any superhero on speed dial, who would it be and why?
Ooh. I'm not really into like the traditional superheroes as much anymore, like Batman or Superman. Loved Batman, loved Captain America. I'm more on the anime side when it comes to superheroes. And one of my favorite animes growing up was Sailor Moon. So I feel like Usagi would be my number one BFF speed dial because I think she's like, she loves her friends. She's there for the loyalty and like fighting for justice and love. And I feel like she'd be really fun to have a sleepover with. So I think Usagi would be my number one speed dial.
Definitely the first time we've heard that, and I love it. Awesome answer. All right, Jake, go nerd out.
Absolutely. But that reminds me real quick of like when I was growing up watching Sailor Moon in my basement in Philly, like 6 years old, breakfast and 6 a.m. Just like, I'm going to get ready for school. Here's Sailor Moon. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. That's core memory.
100%.
So many childhoods.
Absolutely. My question for you is, what's your favorite word and why?
Appropriate word. Appropriate word. I've been saying rad a lot. So I feel like rad right now is my favorite word, being like, that's pretty rad. Like, that's pretty sick. It's pretty rad. So we'll go with that. We'll go with that one.
It's like a random word that pops up in your dialect, your lexicon a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That or word, literally just word. That one seems to come up, at least in our conversations through text message. You'll give me some information. I'm like, word. All right, word.
So apparently your slang just stopped developing in 1988.
Yep.
Cowabunga.
I walk around work doing this all the time. And they're just like,
Tubular, bro.
I work with a 17-year-old and she was like, what does that mean? Like, what is this? That's not demure of you. I don't understand.
What's up with your hand?
Yeah.
And slang moves so fast these days. Well, by the time we put this podcast out there, people are like, demure. Why would you say that? Because it's like the zeitgeist of this moment.
It really is.
Well, word. I say that. So, Alison, is there anything you'd like to send our listeners home with?
Yeah, I think it's very important to have communication, especially with your friends about how you're doing. When you're comfortable, of course, just speaking your mind of what you're going through. I know for me personally, it's helped so much to, just be honest with my friends, be like, this is what I'm going through right now. Like, I may not be able to do this. I may not be able to hang out for a little while because I'm so incredibly burnt out. I think finding in yourself to have that comfortable way of just being honest with your feelings and just letting yourself feel those feelings is something that's very powerful and very cathartic. And it takes a very long time to get there. And if you are on that journey, just keep going. You'll get there. And it'll feel great when you're able to finally be able to recognize those feelings.
I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. Bravo, you. Well, on that wonderful note, listeners, we're going to wrap up this episode of Nerding Out on Neurodiversity. I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing this journey and story with us. Jake, you want to say goodbye?
As always, take care, everybody, all of our listeners. Alison, always, always, always wonderful to see you. Wonderful to talk to you. I miss you in PA compared to Vermont, but I'll see you whenever I come back for band practices too.
Good. I hope you come by soon. We need to hang out.
Absolutely.
Word. Nerding Out on Neurodiversity is brought to you by Dr. Matt Zakreski and the team at the Neurodiversity Collective. To learn more about the Neurodiversity Collective or to be a guest on the podcast, please visit our website at www.theneurodiversitycollective.com/podcast. Audio and production by Jake Noonan. Show your support by subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, and telling your friends about us. Our Instagram and social media handles are at #NoonPodcast, NOON podcast. Your support is appreciated and keeps us going. All discussions presented on this podcast are strictly for informational purposes, awareness, and understanding. The advice presented is not and should not be considered to be therapeutic in nature. If you have any mental health questions, please contact your provider. All rights reserved.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.